Hey, what's going on, Flicks Talkers? Happy New Year. Now, welcome to a brand new segment that I would like to do here on the channel called Retro Review, where we pretty much talk about the movies from yesteryear, films that I have seen, films that I do not plan to watch for the channel as far as like a reaction, because I've seen them. I grew up and I think that these movies are very influential as far as creating a huge impact, either box office wise or just having that rewatchability value as a classic movie, whether that be a modern movie in my lifetime for my generation or something I can go back 50 years and talk about. Either way, I like to do a lot of movie reviews here on the channel, and I thought reviewing a classic movie would be fun to try out, especially in the new year of 2024. So the film that I'm talking about today is 1997's Titanic. So if you guys have some fond memories of Titanic from 1997, please leave them down in the comments below. Let's get a dialogue started. I would love to hear your favorite moments from this movie, as we did rewatch this film last night in beautiful 4K. I know it came out earlier last month, December, but I recently got a brand new OLED TV. And before we get into the film itself, let me just talk about this first time being on 4K. My God, I'm so glad I could break in my brand new Sony Bravia OLED TV with the film Titanic. Now, this was a movie that I honestly did not see since 1997 in theaters. It was such a phenomenon, and I was only about 11 or 12 years old.
Have you seen this movie before?
I know.
No?
No, it's the first time. Everybody I know that's seen it said it was one of the best I've ever seen, and I have to agree.
Would you see it again?
Definitely, it had about every emotion you could have. I cried, laughed. It was one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Thanks.
She's still crying. Here.
Shut up.
I'm gonna buy it when it comes on video. For real, I loved it.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right.
So how good was it?
It was a real good movie.
It's great.
Yeah? You think you'll be back to see this again?
Probably.
Yeah,
Why?
because it was a great movie.
I cried the whole time.
The fandom is so huge for a movie like this that somehow you just get dragged to this movie. And I remember, even though it was long and at a younger age, I could not believe the magnitude of what I was seeing on screen. Mr. James Cameron really brought this movie to life. Even though if you guys do watch a lot of the behind the scenes, the actual model set for the Titanic was only half built. If you guys watch it, they only did like one side. They only created one side, and they filmed everything at different angles to kind of give the big scope that you're on an actual Titanic, but they couldn't afford to do all that. So once again, through movie magic, you see what you see in the final movie, and I thought that was fantastic. I thought it was wonderful. Once again, when I was a kid watching this in 1997 in the theater, I didn't know. I thought I was watching like an actual Titanic. You know, I didn't know about green screen. I didn't know about any effects. Really, at that age, it's not until you get into your later years where you start appreciating and start diving deeper, you know, behind the scenes and different things and technology along the way, how it's advanced, how it's changed. And Mr. James Cameron is someone that is definitely ahead of the game. Him and Steven Spielberg, man, at the time were definitely ahead of the game when it came to CGI. I'm talking about like light years ahead of a lot of other directors around them. Yeah, they had access to a lot more budget, obviously, but I think that this movie is definitely one that stands the testament of time, as once again, we did rewatch it last night, and it is my wife Laura's favorite movie, and I'm like, let's pop it in. Let's see how long we can get through this one, because I remember it being a long one. Then I looked at the chapter runtime. Oh my God, 3 hours and 17 minutes. I was like, okay, I don't remember it being that long. I thought it was a little under 3 hours, but that's okay. We were dedicated. Yeah, we took a lot of restroom breaks in between this movie, so it became like a 4.5 hour movie watch. And before I get into the story of Titanic, just know that there's probably spoilers along the way. I'm just gonna give you guys my free-flowing thoughts as they hit me, so you have been warned. And I think for the most part, this is probably the most watched and celebrated movie of all time. And once again, I was watching this as an adult, almost 40 years old, just wanting to watch it with fresh eyes, as a more of appreciation for film than I did once again back when I was younger. So watching this, the scope, the magnitude of everything in the early 1900s, I believe it was 1912, that all this started taking place. They talked about, you get to see the set design, you get to see all of the costume wardrobe of everyone at that time, what they wore, the different class system. You kind of saw who was poor, who wasn't. There's a lot of flashy diamonds and jewelry and silverware and everything under the sun that puts you in that feel of 1912. Now, once again, even though this is an over 3-hour movie, we get right into it. I mean, we're introduced to Jack Dawson, played by young Leonardo DiCaprio. And I gotta say young Leonardo DiCaprio because I feel like Leonardo DiCaprio in the 90s looked the same age through that whole decade. That sucker did not change. As well as a young Kate Winslet. And I believe this was the first time that I had seen Kate Winslet. For me, Leo, I believe the first time we saw him was What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I could be wrong about that one. But the connection that these two have on screen, the chemistry. There's been a couple of times recently, especially in my movie reviews for modern movies, where I'm like, the chemistry doesn't work. You're just shoehorning in some famous actors that look pretty or whatever. And yes, in this case, these two people are beautiful people, but this chemistry absolutely worked. And I mean, we're talking about Kate Winslet's character, Rose, who is engaged to someone else. So once again, you already got that barrier. You already have a whoop, Leonardo, what are you doing? But he is so determined and he is so infatuated and in love with her at first sight that he's doing whatever it takes, even knowing the repercussions, knowing that he's a lower class, he's just gonna go for it. And he's on Titanic. And it's a perfect example of these opportunities that may never come around in life, especially in earlier, simple life. We're talking about the turn of the century here. And going back to that class system, I really do love that James Cameron did allow us, the audience, to kind of get to explore each deck of this Titanic. And I mean, go figure, at the bottom, you got the lower class. I mean, you got these guys shoveling coal in there to power this behemoth, and that ain't no easy feat. I mean, these guys are probably getting paid pennies to do this. But as you kind of go up the floors, I mean, these rooms look ratty compared to the upper class, where you have chandeliers on the wall, you have gold-plated frames everywhere, and it's like, I think this is only supposed to be for like a month trek across the Atlantic, and they're making it look like their new apartment building. So once again, Titanic does a fantastic job of showing you all of the glitz and glamour of that set design, which looks once again beautiful and so pristine in 4K, the HDR, the Dolby Vision. Definitely check it out if you guys can. But for me, and the reason once again why this movie has rewatchability, is the powerful ability of acting from our two leading players. Don't get me wrong, Billy Zane ain't no slouch either, but I mean, we're talking about Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet, and they were a star-studded couple. I remember people talking about them after the movie, like they were just really enthralled with these two characters of Jack and Rose. The story is beautiful along the way. I mean, they show Rose at the beginning and throughout the movie just kind of giving her thoughts, retelling this story that had happened to her, as she was one of the surviving members of this horrific ordeal. And by the end of it, when you see what she does with the Hope Diamond, you're like, man, some things really aren't worth selling. And still watching this movie, guys, to this day in 2024, over 25 years later, this movie felt amazing. The last scene, the very last scene, when they pan out and they show Rose sleeping, which I can only presume, and this is just a theory, that she had passed away because she finally kind of said all that she needed to say, and once again give that Hope Diamond back to the ocean where Jack was laid to rest. When they showed that dream sequence or flashback sequence or whatever sequence it was, it had to have been all in her mind because this didn't happen. But when they show all the crew there and they show Jack there and he puts out his hand and he grasps it, I wept like a baby. It was so beautiful. This movie is so magical on so many levels, and the story was horrific of what happened to Titanic and the people involved. And once again, if you guys haven't already, please watch the behind the scenes, because with the movie magic, it made it seem like people were, hanging upright when the Titanic was vertical and bodies were flying everywhere. It was a horrific ordeal. Like the last hour and a half of that movie is a pure nightmare. But once again, somehow James Cameron wraps it with a beautiful emotional bow that leaves you so damn satisfied. And for that, Titanic gets a forever 5 out of 5. And I'm so glad I get to talk about this movie in 2024. All right, Flicks Talkers, what do you think of Titanic from 1997? What are your fondest memories of Titanic? Please leave your thoughts down in the comments below. If you guys did appreciate mine, hit that big thumbs up and consider subscribing today for more reviews and reactions like this. All right, Flicks Talkers, till next one, I'm gone. Peace.